I'm really excited for Molly Batchelder. She is going to be sharing with us her piece, which is called In Conversation with the Cosmos, Developing the Language of Archetypal Combinations. Please welcome Molly.
Thank you, everyone. I would first like to acknowledge our astrology class and Jessica for really helping me to formulate my thoughts on this presentation. Rick Tarnas' book, Cosmos and Psyche, is just amazing. I would also like to acknowledge the Ohlone people whose land we all occupy. So I send my gratitude up to you all. So I was a bit self-possessed recently, having a fit in my mother's kitchen over my ex-husband's behavior that was frustrating to me, but I couldn't control. When there was this flickering at the other end of the house, and I walked compellingly towards it, and I saw that it was an orange and red dragonfly struggling in a cobweb. And I opened up the window, and it flew out in a chaotic and hurried way. I had never seen a dragonfly at my parents' house before, especially one colored like the one I have tattooed on my back. The next day I walked to get the mail in, and there it was, on the asphalt. And I crouched down, and we both sort of stared at each other for a while. And after that, members of its family started to appear. My family and I could walk outside, and one would show up a few minutes later. And the red and orange one even allowed me to take its picture. So this seemed to be a significant experience. It's not often that I become best friends with a dragonfly after saving its life and after it saving me from unnecessary emotional turmoil. But the message that the dragonfly was carrying was unclear to me. You see, I wasn't able to understand the language yet. I came to the idea for this presentation searching for the relevance of a transit I had experienced a few years ago when Saturn in my natal chart Saturn in the sky was conjunct Pluto in my natal chart. I didn't have a clue about this, and my journaling didn't produce any sort of hints I can understand. So I went to my photos and searched for a snapshot that was taken in October 2010, when Saturn was exactly conjunct my Pluto. On October 10th, 2010, I was in the bristlecone pine forest in the White Mountains, the mountain range east of the Sierra. So Saturn embodies old, dry, maturity. It is solitude, endurance, challenge. It defines and it rigidifies. And Pluto intensifies everything it touches. It embodies the extreme. The bristlecone pine is one of the oldest living organisms on the planet. It's 5,000. These trees get to be 5,000 years old, which is extremely Pluto, old Saturn. So this revelation made me curious. What would Saturn-Uranus be coming together then? This is the Grand Canyon, the creation of something new through the breakdown of old structure. Uranus is the trickster, the new, the breakdown. Saturn is old, structure. This is a 40-million-year-old canyon, reinventing itself, exposing 2-billion-year-old rocks and new sandy beaches continuously. And you can see that Saturn is right conjunct my natal, Uranus 3 degrees. How about Saturn-Venus? So these images of the archetypal combinations are gifts that now remain with me. Whenever I encounter the combination again, I could pull them out as reference for instant translation. You see, learning astrology is similar to learning a different language or scientific system. There's a lot of complex translation involved, and oftentimes we are left behind in conversations, lost teasing out the archetypal complexes. So the uses of images to help facilitate conversation, so we can use the images to help facilitate conversations with each other. If someone shares with me that they're experiencing a Saturn-Venus transit, I can see this cactus heart and instantly have a sense about that experience. So this made me hungry to build a repertoire of images. Photography has been a significant love for me for a while, so it was seamless to enter into a new stage of this exploration of this love. And the gifts were really astounding to discover. My past transits were so clearly seen in the photos, but more profoundly, through my study, I noticed that there were messages the cosmos was communicating to me during these transits, and I began to understand their meaning. And I noticed that Mercury seemed to be present when there was a message offered. Mm-hmm. He is the messenger, of course, but his role was so striking to me how obvious it was when I took notice. So I was on a plant trip in the Marble Mountains, and I pointed this tree out to the group. I was really curious if it were one tree or two. It's a foxtail pine, not as long-lived as a bristlecone, only lives about 2,500 years, but it's still very rare. So we eventually climbed up to the top of the mountain, and I headed for this tree. And on the way, I passed by this shrub that had moved out from the center in perfect heart shape. So at the time, Mercury, the messenger, was right conjunct my natal Venus, offering me a message about love. And there's Neptune down there in the sky, which embodies the ideals. And there's Venus in the sky squaring my natal Neptune, which kind of reinforces the idea that this is a message about my ideals of love. You see it with one tree. Each codominant stem is so supportive of the other. The foliage of each one stays a respectable distance apart, so as not to encroach on the other's ability to collect the maximum amount of sunlight. Yet at the same time, each stem perfectly molded to the other and remaining a safe distance so that the wind cannot play one against the other and eventually split the tree apart. You see, this is the danger of codominant stems when the wind starts to take them, and it could take one stem and split down the middle. So this was a message to me from the cosmos about what intimate relationship is for me. So not only was I beginning to understand the messages the cosmos was communicating to me, I began to see myself as a vessel through which the cosmos was communicating with itself. For example, my encounter with this Jeffrey pine. It's the kind of pine that when you put your nose between the fissures of bark, it smells like vanilla. I bolted for this tree too. I had never seen something more integrous, more unflappable. The majority of its branches existed on one vertical plane. And most was growing on the trunk side opposite the prevailing wind direction. It was strategic, using the strength and size of its trunk to skillfully cut the wind and thereby reduce the rate of transpiration or water loss from the needles. It was like a skilled prize fighter, with the wind as its fierce competitor. And I was overcome with its magnitude, and I just sat underneath it and I cried. So at the time, Saturn in the sky, skill, endurance, study, Mars, the warrior, the fighter, and Moon, emotion, the great mother goddess, were all in the sky, and they were squaring Neptune Mercury in the sky, which is the messenger. And this was all happening on my natal sun, my hero's journey. It was as if I was the vessel for the moon's expression, through which the great mother goddess was able to communicate, Mercury, her adoration to the prize fighter. That I was integral in the completion of the Saturn-Mars-Moon archetypal complex at that moment. The rest of my examples feature Mercury and Neptune. For the last 5 years, I have been experiencing this transit where Neptune has been opposite my natal Mercury. They are the main players in this archetypal language development for me. Mercury being communication, language, Neptune being the cosmos, spirituality. Saturn's structure, maturation is there too, and we will come to him. So one of the outcomes of the Neptune-Mercury complex are experiences of awareness of the world of Neptune, the intuitive, the unexplainable, and mysterious. So here I am in the mid-peninsula range, the ridge between Half Moon Bay and Big Basin. I hiked in 2 miles to this camp, and then the next morning I hiked another 5 miles down into a Douglas fir forest. I saw no hikers. A few mountain bikers flew by. One asked if I was afraid of mountain lions. I got off the trail when I got to the creek, and I continued up until I found a clearing with sun and little wading pools and sand. And I was feeling very fairy-like, as you can see, and I got undressed, and I enjoyed them all. So I never ventured more than 10 feet from my clothes, but when I went to get dressed again, I couldn't find one sock. I knew it was on my foot when I arrived. So I walked back around 2 miles, 1 foot sockless. Before I turned my head suddenly, and I saw my sock on the side of the trail, perfectly placed like it wanted to be found. So here's what was going on with me at the time. There's my Neptune-Mercury outer planet transit, and there's Mars right there. The communication I received from the realm of Neptune was a bit more forceful and aggressive. You know, someone stealing my sock. But also, you know, you have right here Neptune trine Mercury, which I felt gave me more support for this transit and this combination because I was never afraid. I found that often when Mercury was an aspect to Neptune, the messages he brings are transpersonal, offering opportunities for transformation. And this is where the photographs are so great because they can record an image in the exact time of the personal transit, and then I can return to the scene later on where the message sits, waiting for as long as it takes for me to get there. So I was in Baja, Mexico, Todos Santos, and I was very determined to have a spiritual experience. And I decided that on solstice I was just going to walk into the desert and see how far I got. And I didn't get very far because these barbs stuck to me and interrupted me so well that every few steps I would have to stop and pull 10 of them off me to stop their process of drilling into my flesh. And then this 4-cylinder engine starts on the other side of the ridge, and it just fills the airspace with just this horribleness. And these flies are buzzing around my head, and I'm very determined to have a spiritual experience and not be annoyed. And then I see the succulent flower, and I crouch down to take a shot, and this hummingbird comes right in front of my camera, looks at me and poses. My animal totem book says the hummingbird reminds us to find joy in what we do. So, again, here is the Neptune-Mercury outer planet transit. And I have a natal Neptune square Mars, and that can be interpreted as the more assertive, rigorous spiritual path. And there's Neptune right there, Mercury right there, giving me a message on how best to navigate that. So I have a lot of more pictures to show you, but for the sake of time, we must skip to the end and come back to the dragonfly, who came to me during a fit about my ex-husband, settled in my father's garden. When I look at what was going on, here's Mercury and Neptune, the archetypal complex of transpersonal messages and messages for the Neptunian realm, the dragonfly realm. And it's conjoining my Mercury-Venus, which is my comprehension, Mercury of love, Venus. So transpersonal messages about my understanding of love. And there's Saturn right there, the stern father, 90 degrees away from both, which is a T-square, representing the difficulty, the rigidity, the unwillingness to change, but also the maturity that comes when we do so, which allows for new structures to be built based on the wisdom gained. Through the dragonfly, the cosmos interrupted my tantrum to tell me it was time to be mature and let my ex-husband go. And then hung around in my father's garden just to make sure I did. So, photography is a way in which we can engage with the cosmos. When I acknowledge the beauty of the cosmos to such a degree that I must take out my camera to record, I find that it offers itself even more to our dance and to our conversation. I have come to realize that we are the containers through which the language of the cosmos is spoken and received. All of us, the birds, the rivers, the dirt, the planets. But while everyone else seems to have continued their engagement in cosmic communication, most humans have been cut off, or we have cut ourselves off, and now we have forgotten our own language. And when I say we, I'm referring to those of us who have lost meaning and connection for what is sacred, where patriarchy, racism, oppression, capitalism reign. I think it's important to acknowledge indigenous peoples who still resist, who still maintain their connection with the cosmos and are continuing to resist white supremacy. Arundhati Roy said, "We will soon have to admit that the millions of indigenous people fighting to prevent the takeover of their lands and the destruction of their environment, the people who still know the secrets to sustainable living, are not relics of the past, but guides to our future." So I want to acknowledge my responsibility to the cosmos and to our future. I make my commitment to relearning our language, because this patriarchal, racist, oppressive, capitalist system is not the only paradigm of self-expression for us. And really, through our curiosity of the cosmos, we can possibly merge back into something that I am not even sure what it is yet, only that it feels really, really good to be there. So in closing, I have sewn a small quilt like transits as a record of my commitment to the language that I am learning, but also as a gift to the cosmos and celebration and love for this new relationship we are cultivating. Thank you.